to the youth of Brazil relates this story from the tradition of the church. St. Peter is fleeing Rome in the time of Nero's persecutions and is on the road away from the city. And on that road, he encounters Jesus walking towards the city and about to pass him. Peter says to him, he's startled, and he says, "Lord, where are you going?" And Jesus answered him, "I am going to Rome to be crucified again." And Peter realizes at that moment that he must turn back to the city. He must be with his Lord and with those who suffer. So today is Palm Sunday, or Passion Sunday, and it's the first day of Holy Week. We have just heard the Passion of Christ. This is our last week of Lent, and we are approaching Easter. But first, we must know this way of the cross. It's not the easiest religion, Christianity. Its most powerful symbol is something akin to a noose or the electric chair. Its God became human and walked the earth and did not put on the armor of might but of meekness. Christianity's God did not identify with kings and princes, but with prostitutes and tax collectors and servants and orphans and criminals and the poor. Its God said, "I am willing out of love to suffer with you, to experience what you experience when you suffer, to be isolated with you and alone. I am willing to lose everything for you." Its God said, "Follow me into this way of the cross." What do we have to say to that? I was reflecting on the story of the Passion, and I had to be honest. The one character that I could really sympathize with was Pilate. You know, I'm not homeless or hungry. I'm not materially poor. I'm more like the people in power. But Pilate, he understands that there's something not right here. In John's Gospel, he waxes philosophical. He says, "What's truth?" But come on. We know he's simply faking it. He knows this guy Jesus is being framed and set up. But he can't bring himself to save this one life. And he says, "I wash my hands of it." But this washing is no baptism. If it is, it's false. And I kind of get Pilate. He couldn't come out and say, "You people are killing an innocent man." He didn't want to risk his position, his comfort, his wealth. He didn't want to risk maybe another revolt or insurrection in this hot border territory. Do we want to risk ourselves and our positions? Do we want to continually stress ourselves out by going against the boss or our colleagues when something's not going right in our workplace? Do we want to bother? You never know what was going through Pilate's mind. Maybe he was hoping to be promoted to another position in the empire, to get out of this backwater position. There are traditions. There is one from Ethiopia in which Pilate later becomes a saint. He realizes what he has done. He says, "I felt the force of anger of the crowds," and Jesus forgives him. In that story, his wife and daughter are the ones who defend Jesus and even declare that they're going to give their lives for him. In these stories, Pilate's redemption is hopeful. And in fact, later, Pilate is seen to intervene to try to save Stephen from martyrdom. Pilate, in those stories, rejected his career path and his position and decided to walk with the poor and the rejected. We understand with Pilate that struggling to stand up for what is right at the risk of ourselves, to empty ourselves for the sake of the right and the true and the good, is difficult. We're reluctant to take that risk in the face of the pressures that come at us. We know those pressures that we shouldn't rock the boat. We want to be nice and to make peace, even in an unjust situation. We tend to protect ourselves first. Those pressures are real. I can't help but think Pilate felt them. And I know we feel them. But the cross reminds us that God is first of all found in the places we often dare not look. God is incarnate not only in the good, but also in the bad of human life. Jesus hung in Luke's gospel between the good and the bad thief. Contradictions come together in the cross. It's not just the state that put Jesus to death. It was also the religious leaders of his day, the church, if you will. And we're called this week, really every week, but this week for sure, to come to the foot of the cross. To understand where God chose to be with the forsaken and the rejected, with the weak and the defeated. The victory of the cross is symbolized by the donkey and the palm branch, not the regal procession of the emperor, but the procession of the poor. Where are you going, Lord? I'm going to be crucified again. This Holy Week comes at the end of a very difficult year, an unimaginable year of suffering and death, a year of loss and contradiction, a year in which truth and lies mixed together, a year in which isolation and suffering seems unfathomable. T.S. Eliot said, "A human being can only take so much reality." But the point of Holy Week is not to revel in suffering. It's to realize that God has gone this way too, and that God leads the way, that the Lord walks ahead of us, leads us, guides us. We can be there when they crucified my Lord, because it is God who is there also. No loss defeats us permanently. No lie extinguishes the truth forever. Still we rise. Jesus goes to be crucified again and again with us, but also is raised again and again with us. There is something in us that will not be crushed, will not be killed, will not be held by any tomb forever. Still we rise. For there is no suffering that is beyond God's compassion and love. There is no isolation which God cannot experience alongside us. There is no grief, no loss that God cannot understand. There is nothing that can separate us from God, the font of love, the source of all. This Holy Week is unlike any other in our lifetimes, at least in mine. God be with us during this time. God raise us up at the end of this week. We pray, we plead, we groan even. Amen.